Today, we're going to dive into the story of a man who looked at the absolute chaos of the financial markets and saw something totally different. He didn't see a gamble, he saw a puzzle. And it was a puzzle he was born to solve.
So if I asked you that question, who is the greatest investor of our time? A few names probably pop right into your head, don't they? You know, the legends, the ones everyone's heard of.
You're probably thinking of Warren Buffett, right? Maybe George Soros. But what if I told you that the person with the most staggering, almost unbelievable track record is someone you might not even know? His name is Jim Simons.
And here's the kicker, the thing that makes his story so amazing. He wasn't a Wall Street guy. He wasn't an economist. He came from a completely different universe, and he was armed with a totally different way of seeing the world.
To really get how he conquered Wall Street, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Because you see, his entire life was built around one thing: solving problems. Jim Simons was born in 1938. And let's be clear, he was not a kid dreaming about getting rich. No, he was obsessed with puzzles, with numbers. While other kids were outside playing, he was inside tackling problems that left the adults around him scratching their heads. His teachers knew right away, this kid was just wired differently. And that unique mind took him on one heck of a journey. He studied math at MIT, got his PhD from Berkeley, and then became this world-class professor at Harvard and MIT. He even worked as a top-secret codebreaker for the US during the Cold War, finding hidden patterns in enemy messages. Now, this is super important. He was a master at finding signals in the noise long before he ever looked at a stock chart.
So after basically conquering the worlds of academia and cryptography, Simons looked around for a new challenge, and he decided to make a massive pivot from the quiet world of the blackboard to the absolute chaos of the stock ticker.
And this question, right here, gets to the very heart of his new quest. He wondered if the same math that could describe galaxies and atoms could also find some kind of order in the random-looking mess of the market. I mean, back then, that was a totally wild, almost ridiculous question to even ask.
So, in the late 70s, he started Renaissance Technologies. But look, this was not your typical hedge fund. He didn't hire a single person from Wall Street. Instead, he hired people just like him, PhDs in physics, computer science, and of course, mathematics. He built a team of scientists to go up against the traders.
And this was the big difference. Everybody else on Wall Street was trading based on gut feelings, on news headlines, on emotion. Simons and his team, they ignored all of that. Their whole bet was that deep inside mountains and mountains of market data, there were these faint, hidden signals, little, non-random blips that were totally invisible to the human eye, but that could be predicted if you looked at millions and millions of trades. But this whole revolutionary idea, it did not work overnight, not even close. In fact, for years, it looked like it was going to be a complete and total failure. Seriously, that first decade was just a grind. Their super smart algorithms and complicated models were losing money. The patterns they thought they'd found would just disappear. I mean, most people would have just given up and said, okay, the market really is just random. But Simons and his team, they were scientists. They just believed the patterns had to be in there somewhere, they just hadn't dug deep enough. So they kept digging. They refined the models, tweaked the algorithms, and fed them more and more data. And then, slowly at first, the code started to work. The system started making good trades. And then the money, well, it didn't just trickle in. It started to pour in.
What happened next was a run of success so incredible, so dominant, that it basically rewrote the entire rulebook for how to invest.
This is the number at the heart of the whole legend. For over 30 years, his main fund, the Medallion Fund, returned an average of 66% a year before fees. 66% every year, on average. Just let that sink in for a second.
To put that into perspective, okay? If you invested $1,000 with the legendary Warren Buffett back in 1988, you'd have about $20,000 today, which is fantastic, right? But that same $1,000 with Jim Simons, it would have grown into hundreds of millions. The scale is just, it's breathtaking.
These numbers, they sound fake. They seem impossible, like there has to be a typo. But they are absolutely 100% real. And they make Jim Simons, without a doubt, the most successful investor who has ever lived. But, you know, if we only focus on the money, we're kind of missing the whole point of the story and the man himself. The real question we should be asking is why? Why did he do all this?
I mean, think about it. Why would a world-class mathematician who had already achieved so much dedicate his life to this problem? It definitely wasn't just about getting rich.
The answer is actually pretty simple. For Jim Simons, the stock market was the ultimate puzzle. It was the biggest, most complex, most fascinating data problem on the entire planet. And as the ultimate puzzle solver, he just had to take a crack at it. The billions of dollars? That was just the score you got for solving the puzzle.
And what he did with that score proves what really motivated him. He and his wife Marilyn became some of the world's biggest philanthropists. They've given away billions to fund basic scientific research, to support the next generation of mathematicians, to advance autism research, and to improve how we teach science and math in our schools.
In the end, his whole life, from code breaking to Wall Street, was never really about chasing money. It was about chasing ideas. It was about an unstoppable curiosity and the pure joy of solving beautiful, complicated problems.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? Jim Simons proved that looking at the world through a totally different lens can change everything. So it makes you wonder, what's the biggest puzzle that you want to solve?